As with any franchise that has 11, soon to be 13 movies, there will be many unmade concepts that are never given their time to shine, and Halloween is no different. With some strange concepts such as Michael killing in a high-rise, copying Frankenstein's monster, and even going to space, the Halloween franchise has nearly gone to even weirder places than the final films we ended up getting. Now, for this video, I'm only really going to be looking at truly unmade Halloween films, as there's been a lot more unmade Halloween films compared to other franchises I've covered. So, stuff like small changes from Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, from like an evil toy maker version, to the real Season of the Witch, and other ideas like for a 2009 Halloween 2 being slightly different from the final version we got, and both H2O and Resurrection having different subplots tied in that weren't included in the final version because they literally weren't needed. I just don't feel like they need their own separate points, as they didn't change enough about their finished films to warrant actual entries on them. Oh, and Halloween 6's producer's cut won't be mentioned either, as that's a whole other mess I cannot be bothered getting into, and there's so many videos on it anyway, there's no point. And neither will, like, the Hatchet creator Adam Green's idea, as it never even got properly pitched, and it's just confusing, but basically, just imagine a more realistic version of Hatchet with Michael Myers instead of Victor Crowley. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get straight into this with our first entry. Now, I know this may seem like an odd entry to have in a Halloween video, but there is some evidence that suggests the concept for Halloween was taken from an idea Black Christmas director Bob Clark stated to John Carpenter. When asked by Carpenter what he'd do for a Black Christmas 2 film, Clark apparently stated that it would be a year after Black Christmas and Billy would have been caught. He then would have escaped a mental institution, going back to the house and start killing randomly all over again, just like in the first movie. But he also stated that the film would be called Halloween and would be set on Halloween instead of Christmas. Now, it should be noted that Clark does not hold anything against Carpenter, and he openly states that Carpenter did not rip him off, and apparently he was a big fan of Halloween, the same way that Carpenter was a big fan of Black Christmas, but it's still cool to hear that such a small film accidentally helped create one of the biggest franchises in horror history and even cinema history. Now, the evidence behind this is flimsy at best, but I feel like it needs to be called out because Black Christmas does not get the recognition it deserves, and it's in my top favourite 3 films of all time, so I thought I'd give it a little bit of a shout out here. Time for a nice and easy concept of this one. Essentially, producers desperately wanted Carpenter and Hill to do a sequel to Halloween, but they just weren't interested until they realised that they'd make one however they wanted, basically, and the producers ended up making Halloween 2 with or without them, so they ended up writing 2 different ideas for Halloween 2. The second idea was the one that became Halloween 2 that we know and most of us love to this day, whilst the first idea was very different, being set around 2 years after the original instead of directly the moment after the original. This one looks at Laurie now living in a high-rise building as Michael returns to kill her. Look at stuff like toolbox murders, all that kind of stuff. You've basically got what Halloween 2 would have been. Not much else is known except that Carpenter changed his mind and rewrote the film from scratch into the Halloween 2 that was eventually released, which, I gotta say, it is my favourite Halloween movie. Controversial statement apparently, but hey, I prefer it a lot more to the Thorn trilogy. That's as much as I need to say. After Halloween 3's unfair failure at the box office, it was decided that the 4th film planned for the 10th anniversary would be a direct sequel to Halloween 2. With Carpenter and Hill being dragged back once again, they chose author Dennis Atkinson to write the script, and the trio's idea to continue the story involved Halloween now being banned in Haddonfield due to the 1978 murders. But when a group do a midnight drive in a party, it seems that Michael has returned. This time the main characters would have been Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, the 2 kids from the original film, and it would have focused on the fear the town now has because of the holiday and what Michael did. It would have also explored Laurie and Loomis and Michael's relationship, showing that Loomis possibly abused Michael when he was at the mental institution, and the film's killer would have remained a mystery until the final act, where it shows that Michael is now a ghost thing and has strong supernatural powers after he died in Halloween 2, which is something that neither 4 or 7 explain, but producer Mustafa Akkad was not interested at all in this idea, and yeah, it just didn't really happen because of that. Eventually, Carpenter and Hill ended up selling their rights to Akkad, and yeah, they left until 2018's Halloween brought back Carpenter as a producer and obviously composer, with Hill sadly passing away before she could return to the franchise. But hey, Akkad tried his best and we did eventually get H2O, and I know a lot of fans do like the Fawn trilogy, but I think we can all agree just to skip Resurrection. So, win some, lose some. Okay, so this one is just really fucking weird. So after Part 4 became a big success, both with fans and with general audiences, Part 5 was immediately greenlit, and an odd idea was created. After falling down the mineshaft at the end of Part 4, Michael had now regained his humanity and would gain a similar personality to Frankenstein's monster, so still mute, unintelligent and weird, but also gentler, kinder and more loving. 3 things you should not put with Michael Myers, the motherfucking Shape and Boogeyman. But due to his murder spree in the previous movies, the residents of Haddonfield want him dead, which is fair enough, and Michael would now only kill in self-defense instead of going out to murder, which ruins the entire point of a slasher movie, with Dr. Loomis of all fucking people, the man who called him pure evil incarnate, being the only one who believes his humanity has somehow returned. However, Michael would have apparently died at the end of this movie, which is probably the only positive it could have given, and yeah, it didn't happen. Mustafa Akkad looked at it and went hell to the no on the project, and even though they did make the very divisive Halloween 5 we now have, hell, it's better than Michael Myers hugging a child or some other weird kind shit, which, no, that should be nowhere near a Halloween movie. Burn it, please. Burn it now. Now, before we get to the mess which was The Curse of Michael Myers, a good couple of concepts for Halloween 6 were created, including this very interesting concept from director Quentin Tarantino. Yes, Quentin fucking Tarantino. Now, apparently Miramax were considering contracting him to write Halloween 6 to explain the Man in Black who appeared in Part 5, and Tarantino's idea was a semi-road trip movie, with Michael and the Man in Black being on the run for the first half of the movie, and Michael basically just killing everyone they came across, leading a trail of bodies in their way. Now, not much else is known about the second half, and Tarantino was never fully contracted to write the film, so it never moved past the basic idea phase, which I can't tell if it's a good or a bad thing, but we can always wonder what if, and at least it wouldn't have been as bad as The Curse of Michael Myers, which I'm sorry, I know it's got its fans, but it's terrible, and the producers put, it's minorly better. Minorly. Another weird concept was by franchise creator John Carpenter himself, and yes, Michael Myers in space. From what it sounds like, Carpenter was more messing with the producers and pissing them off than actually being serious, but you know, Michael in space, Leprechaun did it, Pinhead did it, Jason did it, so why not? Why not? Now, one final concept for Halloween 6 would have been Halloween 6, The Origin of Michael Myers, as I like to call it, which would have looked into Michael's origins as its connection to the Festival of Samhain, also known as Samhain, as well as starring Tommy Doyle in a leading role, which evidently went to Paul Rudd in the final version, with a member of the Myers family finding out about their true origins, similar to the finished film, but in this version, Michael would have been hiding out as a homeless person in order to not get caught for his crimes, because shaking his chains at the end of Part 5 wasn't bad enough. Whilst Tommy visits, he just creates a VR program, which becomes a portal to the Netherworld to see Michael's family being cursed. Is all I can say, just Loomis would have appeared briefly, now completely scarred by the previous encounters, ignoring the fact, of course, he died at the end of Part 5 from a stroke, and it's never really acknowledged for some reason. But he ends up committing himself to his own asylum and passing the Myers stopping torch to Tommy. However, Mustafa Akkad apparently despised this script more than any other version of Halloween 6, and we ended up even getting 2 different versions of Halloween 6, which is so confusing. Now, this is all according to What Culture, a bunch of other weird ideas for a 6th film, such as Loomis being Michael's dad, the Man in Black being his dad, Michael's mother actually being a member of the Cult of Fawn, but I'm not sure if these are actually real, as What Culture doesn't list sources for a lot of their lists, so take those ones with a grain of salt. But yeah, Michael Myers The origin of Michael Myers, what the fucking hell is that? Just no. But the worst part is some of those ideas ended up in Halloween 6, which just proves how much of a mess that movie really was. Time for two different concepts here, this time for Halloween 7. So the first idea for a 7th movie would have been a direct sequel to Part 6, and written by Daniel Farrans during production of Part 6. However, nothing else is known about this concept, except it just wasn't chosen to be the 7th installment of the franchise, and that's literally it. The other Halloween concept, written by Robert Zeppa, was titled Two Faces of Evil. In this concept, Michael dies officially, as in dead, never coming back. We promise, look, his head has exploded kind of dead, at the start of the movie. But then is seen killing schoolboarding kids for some reason. A twist would have involved a copycat killer similar to Friday the 13th Part 5, with some versions of the script involving Laurie Strode as well, with that version being titled Blood Ties. Not much else is known about the concept except it didn't go through, but certain elements of both these concepts were apparently later used for H2O, most of the idea of bringing Laurie Strode back as the main protagonist, and featuring some kind of explanation for Michael still wanting to stalk her down. Now, honestly, this entry is very simple. Just picture Wes Craven's New Nightmare, or even Scream 3, but with more Halloween instead of Nightmare, with a copycat killer murdering the cast and crew who are trying to make Halloween 8. It honestly sounds a bit dull, as the concept had already been done twice before, but luckily a card was not interested in the film and it was quickly scrapped, even if it probably would have been better than Resurrection, which, you know, many things are better than Resurrection. Like, anything at all. Name me a movie that is terrible, and I'm pretty sure I'd rather watch that than ever watch Halloween Resurrection ever again. Time for the dumbest sequel title yet, as Halloween 3000 was going to be a direct sequel to the second film once again, and no, it's not set in the year 3000, actually the year 2000. But it was meant to be like Halloween 3, so they gave it 3, then the 0. It's a mess. So after Michael's death in Part 2, there's a new killer murdering a bunch of people's friends and mother, blah blah blah. Basically a guy murders his friends and his mum. Simple as that. Then we get put in Smith's Grove Sanatorium, where Lindsay Wallace is now Dr. Loomis's assistant and or taken on his job role. This one's honestly a mess. There's a ton of references to past films, such as The Cult of Michael, The Festival of Samhain, not Michael getting shot to bits and dying, but he's also not dead, like at the end of Halloween 4, that kind of thing. But the only interesting part of this film, and I'm not joking, is when Tommy Doyle randomly appears at the end of the movie with a rocket launcher and blows not Michael Myers into bits and pieces because fuck it. So yeah, it's another copycat killer. Luckily this one was not taken seriously by Dimension Films, and they basically laughed them out of the studio and looked at different concepts of Halloween 9 instead. Thank God. Now, I've already kind of covered this in my Unmade Hellraiser Projects video, so please be sure to click on that one, as it's my one of my least watched videos, and I'm very proud of it because I love Hellraiser, so be sure to check it out. But basically, Clive Barker would have wrote it, John Carpenter would have directed it, and a card just wasn't interested, so it didn't happen. But also, according to Den of Geek, there was another idea of Michael versus Pinhead in the 90s, but I literally can't find any reliable source talking about it. But it would have apparently stated that Michael's origins would have focused around the lament configuration or puzzle box. Real or not, it didn't happen, so it doesn't matter, but still, apparently there was another one. I thought I may as well give it a passing mention. Time for a trio for this year. So the first concept in 2005 would have been a direct sequel to Halloween Resurrection, being the 5th film in that timeline, focusing on Laurie's son John from H2O, hunting down Michael with Sheriff Brackett from the original 2 movies as they take revenge for the loved ones they've both lost. Michael would have actually died in this movie once again, promised his head exploded, blah blah blah, and John possibly taking over for him as Michael's nephew and replacing him, the same way that Jamie Lloyd might have done at the end of Part 5 but then wasn't, the same way that literally all the franchises that have killed off a main villain have tried to do, but it doesn't happen, so please stop trying to do this. but it was actually about to go into pre-production as a possibility. However, sadly in 2005, Mustafa Akkad died in a terrorist attack and the idea was scrapped and Rob Zombie's remake was chosen instead. But around the same time, two other ideas were looked at but rejected. The first being a midquel focused on seeing Michael's younger self at Smith Grove's sanitarium, set between the opening parts of the original film and the main part of the original film. It has kind of a similar idea, looking at Michael in an asylum. Both these concepts do that, but this one, the second idea, would have been a sequel to Resurrection instead. However, both ideas were ignored and the remake was chosen instead. But at least the remake did look at Michael's younger years, like the first concept said, so that is a positive, and it may have taken inspiration, but I'm not too sure. Rob Zombie does his Rob Zombie things, and I love him for it. I'm sorry, I like Rob Zombie. Fight me in the comments. Shortly after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was still a mild, if not amazing success at the box office, a third instalment was instantly greenlit, with the creators behind My Bloody Valentine 3D being asked to write and direct. The writer Todd Farmer was apparently only given a week to submit the first draft, and would have slightly changed the ending of part 2, so Laurie accidentally stabbed Loomis and not Michael. And both Laurie and Michael run away together until Michael disappears about a quarter of the way through the movie, and Laurie is put in an asylum, basically explaining the ending of the second film, where she's randomly in an asylum for no real discernible reason. Then the film would jump forward a few years to show Laurie still in an asylum and Michael going there to try and get her back, killing everyone in his way. Eventually Laurie would kill herself so he couldn't control her anymore with his weird mind powers explained in Halloween 2, well, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, with Michael killing off every other cast member in a massive rage essentially. Then he would leave the asylum still alive. Apparently there would have also been a few nods and references, with Doctor Who would have been played by Halloween 3's Tom Atkins, turning off a TV with a Silver Shamrock advert playing, and Michael having his old mask from parts 1 and 2 melted to his face after the events of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Dimension Films apparently loved the concept and greenlit the production, but with the two just too busy doing Drive Angry, the film was eventually shelved and finally cancelled. Now, after yet again another cancelled Halloween 3 project, shortly before Halloween 2018 went into production, another idea was created to revive the franchise, this time being another direct sequel to Halloween 2, which would make it the third direct sequel to Halloween 2, so my god, just name a movie Halloween 3 by this point, please to god. Halloween Returns was essentially a true Halloween 3. This time being set only 10 years after the first two movies in 1988, same as part 4, and focused on Deputy Gary Hunt, who had a supporting role in the second film, but even though it's my favourite one, I kind of forgot he existed because he's honestly not in it that much. For this film, Hunt and his daughter are present for Michael's execution, which goes wrong, and Michael obviously escapes, causing him to go to Haddonfield's neighbouring town, Russellville. Not much else is known except it would have been made by Saw 4-7's writing duo, Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan. However, by 2015, Dimension Films lost the rights to the franchise for unclear reasons, which caused another concept to be made, another remake. This time by Platinum Dunes, who are behind the dreadful, please abort this, just abort it, Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and the Friday the 13th remake as well. Not much known is about this film's concept, except it would have been another gritty remake slash reboot, which would have added basically nothing to the overall canon, but luckily, Blumhouse quickly snatched up the rights when they were available, before Platinum Dunes could, and ended up rebooting the series brilliantly with Halloween 2018, and I am so excited for Kills and Ends. Like, I could genuinely do an entire video on me just ranting for an hour about how excited I am for both these movies. Now, last but not least, I thought it was time for a little bonus entry as I didn't really know where to put these concepts. So, after Halloween 2 came out, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill came up with an idea to make Halloween an anthology series explaining Halloween 3 Season of the Witch and why it's not really connected to the rest of the franchise. So, each film would have focused on a different horror theme that fits the title Halloween, with the films being released annually every year, with different teams working on different films in order to make sure they had enough production time and also enough release time in order to be constantly released in October. The first was obviously Season of the Witch, with others rumoured to involve werewolves, vampires, zombies, all being released on Halloween, with its main title being Halloween and then a subtitle. Sadly though, after the, as I said earlier, ridiculously unfair critical and box office reception to Halloween 3, the idea was ignored, and 5 years later we got Halloween 4, which was a direct sequel to the second movie. Hopefully though, since Blumhouse now owns the entire rights to the whole franchise, they could easily remake Season of a Witch and turn it into its own anthology film and or TV show. I'd really enjoy that, Blumhouse, so my god, just do it. Just fucking do it. You have the rights, do it, please to god. Because Season of a Witch needs more recognition, it does not get enough. Thank you very much for watching. The video was shorter than I intended. I think it's because it's been a couple of months since I've done a video, so I'm talking a bit fast in this one, and I apologise for that. Yeah, it's not been a good couple of months for me, which is why I didn't upload last month, so I'm sorry about that. I wrote an entire video on Hitchcock, looking at all these unmade concepts, and it was really cool. Hopefully I'll be able to actually record it and release it at some point, but at this moment in time, it took me, I'm currently recording this on the 25th of October, and it should be coming out on the 30th, so yeah, it's taken me a while to even do this one. COVID sucks, is all I can say. It really, really fucking sucks. I didn't get it, but I think you can put 2 and 2 together for certain of us to figure that out. Next month is Nightmare on Elm Street. Don't know when it's going to be released. It will be released next month, though, because it is my favourite franchise out of all the horror franchises, and I've still not covered it on this channel yet. So it's definitely coming out next month. That is a promise from me. Yeah, I hope everyone is doing okay, though. This world currently sucks. Our Prime Minister is killing the poor. America's president is, well, killing everyone. New Zealand rules. I think that's it. If you're American, just go vote Democrat. I don't like Biden. Most people don't like Biden, but my god, you can't have another 4 years of him. And if you do, our Brexit talks are fucked. So please go vote that. If you don't vote Biden and Trump gets in power, we're all going to die here in England. So please vote for the lesser of two evils. But with all that out of the way, I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you're all staying home, being safe, wearing your mask when you go outside. Wash your hands. Please wash your hands more. It's gross how little people are washing their hands at the moment, or just in general. And until next month, whenever it's eventually released, I hope you have an amazing time. I hope everything's okay, and I will see you next month. Goodbye.